feels very subdued. We need like a big breath in, I think, right? Big inhale, hold it, exhale. Little do you know that Winnie's baptism was part of the deal. When I accepted this position, Al Relier said, if you're going to have the wedding at Asylum Hill, you have to have the baptism here at First Church. So here we are. Will you pray with me? God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Some journeys are chosen, right? Some are forced upon us. Some are visible to everyone around us, and others are hidden, quiet. Some journeys begin with a suitcase and a map. Others begin with a diagnosis or a phone call, grief, a confession, a baptismal promise, or the first honest sentence we have spoken in years. This summer, we're taking a journey using the Psalms of Ascent, songs pilgrims sang as they made their way up to Jerusalem. For festivals, for holy days, they came from villages and valleys carrying provisions, carrying children, carrying weariness, carrying memories, carrying hopes, carrying prayers. And they came singing. And it's noteworthy that the first song in the Pilgrim collection isn't really cheerful. Psalm 120 doesn't begin with unruffled faith or easy praise. It begins with distress. In my distress, I cry to the Lord that God may answer. Deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. That's where pilgrimage begins here. Not in denial, sentimentality, not in pretending everything is fine, but in telling the truth. The first step toward God is often not confidence. It is a cry from someone standing in the wreckage of their life and saying, God, deliver me. That's a faithful place to begin. I know about beginnings that don't feel heroic, beginnings that start not with confidence, but surrender. Sometimes the holiest prayer is simply help. Help. Sometimes it's, God, I can't do this by myself. Sometimes it's, deliver me. If that is where you are today, that's not failure. It could be the beginning of the road home. Walter Brueggemann describes the Psalms as companions for the totality of the human life because they move through orientation, disorientation, and new orientation. Seasons when the world seems ordered, seasons when the floor falls out from beneath you, and seasons when by grace we find our way again. Not back to the way things were, but forward into a new life. Have you been on that journey before? Psalm 120 is a psalm of disorientation. It is the prayer of someone surrounded by deceit. The psalmist says a lying tongue is like a warrior's sharp arrows, like burning coals. Words are not harmless, are they? Words are not harmless. Lies are not harmless. Propaganda is not harmless. A deceitful tongue can wound from a distance. And the way it singes our soul can be a scar that lasts a lifetime. We were taught, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. But we've touched on that untruth before here. Words can isolate, shame, erase, threaten, recruit. Words can prepare people for cruelty, bless what God condemns, and condemn what God blesses. And before we point to the lies out there, we need to tell the truth about how easily lies get mixed up in the business of church, into our fear, into our need to be right, and our hunger for control and power. The deceitful tongue is not only public, the deceitful tongue is spiritual. We're living in a moment when lies do not hide in corners. They march in the daylight, demand applause, and then they punish anyone who doesn't clap. We're living in a moment when Christian nationalism does not protect the faith, it conscripts the faith. It wraps the cross in a flag, blesses cruelty as courage, calls domination peace, and then acts surprised when the world catches fire and burns around them. Psalm 120 knows this world. Woe is me, the psalmist says, that I am an alien in Meshech, that I must live among the tents of Kedar. Meshech and Kedar, they were distant places, far off places, names that sounded to the Israelites far from home. The psalmist may be describing a spiritual condition in this part of the song. I live among people whose values are not my values. I live where peace sounds foreign. The moral compass of this nation has no true north any longer, and I don't know how to get home. Some of us know that feeling. We know what it is to be exhausted by a public life that rewards cruelty. We know what it is to see vulnerable children targeted, history distorted, protections dismantled, and whole communities treated as disposable. And if you're tired or overwhelmed, if you wonder how one person, one family, one congregation can stand against so much noise and cruelty, hear this. Psalm 120 does not demand that you solve everything before sundown. It gives you permission to begin with one honest prayer. Deliver me, Lord. Deliver us, Lord. That may be enough for today. And then comes the cry at the end of the psalm. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. That sentence is ancient, but it is painfully current. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. I am for the truth, but when I speak, they are for fabrication. I am for mercy, but when I speak, they are for punishment. I am for dignity of every child of God. Every child of God. But when I speak, they are for othering, blaming, and excluding. The opposite of truth is not only the lie. The opposite of truth is not only the lie, it is the whole architecture of deceit that teaches us to live as if the lie were holy. So, in the midst of this, what is real power? Is there such a thing? Is it domination, threat, humiliation, turning neighbors into enemies, or is it the capacity to tell the truth without becoming cruel, to hear the truth without becoming defensive, to seek peace without becoming passive, to stay human in a world training us to be inhumane? This is where our siblings in recovery, they have something to teach the church, I think. The first of the 12 steps is admitting you have a problem. And Lord, do we have a problem. with lies, violence, isolation, confusing outrage for courage and cruelty for strength. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Lord, do we need some sanity right now? The phrase "one day at a time" that came out of recovery communities in the 30s and 40s it's not small faith. It is disciplined faith, a way of refusing to be swallowed by the world's broken altars of pain. I may not fix the world by Tuesday, but today I can tell the truth, refuse the lie, pray for courage, ask for help, be held by community, and I can walk to Jerusalem on that journey. And please hear this not as theory, but as testimony. Okay? Please hear this not as theory, but as testimony. Because by God's grace, I have lived 13 years sober, one day at a time. I did not learn that phrase, "one day at a time," as a slogan. I learned it as survival. Knowing that the trauma would never completely leave me, the whole future was too much to carry, but I could carry it for one day. One honest hour, one phone call, one prayer, one meeting, one refusal to be alone, one more step towards life. Over time, one day became 1 week. 1 week became 1 month. 1 month became 13 years. Not because I became strong enough to do it alone, but because God kept showing up through the people who would not let me disappear. Isolation was the descent into oblivion. Community was the hand reaching out. We will help you get up. We will walk with you. Let's just make it through today. Give us your hand. And that is why I believe the church matters today. Not because it's perfect or because this room can fix every wound before lunch, but because none of us are meant to make the journey alone. At our best, we are a way station for weary travelers. The red doors of this meeting house, they are thrown wide for the tired, for the afraid, grieving, recovering, searching, and those who have forgotten how beloved they are. Those red doors, they are thrown wide for you. The purpose of this place is not to find God as though God were trapped inside our walls, just here on Sunday mornings, just kind of waiting for us all week long. It is to remember that God is everywhere. On the road, in the water, at the table, beside the hospital bed, in the meeting room, in the march for justice, in the silence after bad news, in the friend who says, "I am not leaving you alone today." Today, baptism tells that truth in water. It does not promise a life without distress. It doesn't. It promises we do not make the journey alone. It is the church saying to this child and to every one of us, when distress comes, when lies get loud, when the road gets long, you do not walk alone, right? You belong to God. You belong among people who promise to help you. Remember who you are. Maybe one of the holiest gifts we can give the next generation is not the illusion that we were never afraid, that we were never wrong, that we were never lost or in need of grace, but the witness that when we were afraid, grace met us. When we were lost, community found us. When the road was long, God gave us enough light for just one more step. Maybe Psalm 120 is the only honest place to begin this pilgrimage. Not with polished faith, easy peace, or a church pretending everything is fine, but with a cry from the gut Deliver me, O Lord. Deliver us from the lie that children must inherit our fear. Deliver us from the lie that the church exists to decorate the empire. Deliver us from the lie that empathy is sin. Deliver us from the lie that baptism is merely a sweet ritual instead of a public reminder of the way of Jesus. Because today, at this font, we do not baptize anyone into nostalgia. We do not baptize anyone into a polite religion, certainly not in our household. We baptize into a journey, into truth-telling, into community, into the stubborn, costly, holy work of peace. And it's work. And in a world that keeps handing children sharp arrows and calling them toys, and burning coals and calling them tradition, we have to ask, what are we passing down? Are we passing down grievance, silence, pseudo-faith rooted in empire, or religion that blesses war because peace is anathema to power? Or are we passing down an old pilgrim song, I am for peace? Say it when they call you naive. Say it when they call you dangerous. Say it when they tell you the only choices are domination or despair. You say, I am for peace. Not the peace of silence or surrender or pretending the arrows are not sharp and the coals are not burning. You say, I am for peace. The peace of Christ, the peace that tells the truth, protects the vulnerable, refuses to let bullies have the final word, and gets up in the morning to say, just for today, I will not lie. Just for today, I will not make war with my neighbor. Just for today, I will walk the pilgrim road to Jerusalem. I am for peace. The peace that passes all understanding. I am for peace. Beloved friends, we may have started these Psalms in distress and disorientation, but we're not staying there. We are pilgrims. We're baptized. We're not alone. So let the lying lips pontificate all they want. If they got to do it, they'll do it. Let the war makers posture. We will not build our lives out of their rage. We know another way. I am for peace. One day at a time, one truth at a time, one act of mercy at a time, one song at a time, we make our way out of the valley of isolation and onto the holy rock, the holy, stable rock of community, and we do it singing pilgrim songs as we go. Amen.